and diverse job experiences. And nobody better at that than mainland alum Tony Granieri, who's our next guest. He's been an ESPN spotter, Monday Night Football, okay? And if I read this correctly, he goes back to the Joe Theismann days. So started off Sunday Night Football, and just to read down the resume, because, it's Tony and it'll be Tony Granieri and Joe Theismann, Tony Granieri and Ron Jaworski, Tony Granieri and John Gruden, Tony Granieri and Jason Witten, and now Tony Granieri and Booger McFarland. Good morning, Tony. How are you?
Hey, Pete. What's going on, brother? I'm great.
I want to find out a little bit, and welcome to the show, your background, your experience. I kind of highlighted a little bit, but how did you get into the job that you're in? Like, how do you fall into being in an ESPN booth for, 20 years?
Yeah, it's been a fortunate turn of events, really. I played high school quarterback, as you mentioned, at Mainland and then Holy Spirit. As a result of those experiences, I went on to play college football at Bryant University up in Rhode Island. I was a 4-year starter there, and as a result of playing up there, I met a guy by the name of Todd McShay, who, of course, is the draft expert for ESPN now. I worked with Todd for a couple of seasons, and then the opportunity arose to branch out to television, and back in 2002, I joined the Sunday Night Football crew with Joe Theismann, and from there, it's kind of blossomed and grown into a full-time career. So I've had a lot of fortunate breaks along the way, but the experiences have been invaluable. It's been like a graduate course in football, working with Theismann and Jaworski and Gruden and all these guys that have tremendous backgrounds at the NFL level. I've really been fortunate to work with these guys, and they've helped me along in my career, and in turn, I've been able to, support their broadcasting, both Sunday night and Monday Night Football.
So set the scene for me a little bit. The first time that you walk in a booth with Theismann, you don't just walk in the booth. There's pregame meetings and weekly meetings leading up to the broadcast and stuff. But how was your relationship? Let's start with that, with Joe Theismann. What was expected of you? What kind of conversations did you have with him? And how long did it take to build a rapport?
The big thing in live television is trust. And you have to be able to process information quickly up in the booth and be able to give information to those guys that is accurate. If you say something wrong in an effort to be first or in an effort to make a name for yourself, you're going to wind up screwing up and making those guys look bad. So a lesson I learned, very early in that first season was it's better to be slow and correct than fast and wrong. So I've taken that lesson from Joe and applied it, across my career now with all these guys. I really make an effort to be accurate with everything I say and to give it to them timely. And there's a lot of meetings, like you say, that go on before each and every show, and it all boils down to trust. They have to eventually develop that trust in me, and I have to perform in order to garner that trust from them.
To try and paint the picture for our listeners, I guess I got to visit you in the booth. Now, I can't believe it's been this long already. November 11th of 2014, I put up a picture from the Monday Night Football booth. You were nice enough to let us come up and see you at halftime, and a couple of us got up there, and I made you hold up your sign, and the sign you're holding says, Selleck and Casey, help and run block, some sort of hieroglyphic, and then it says pass pro. Can you interpret what your sign means?
So, a lot of the stuff boils down to schematics and the X and O type stuff. I have a background playing football, and being a quarterback, you develop a broader sense of the game than you would just as a casual fan. So that experience has helped me identify, all the X and O stuff that these guys are looking for from a schematic standpoint. So that particular card is one of 1,000 I would hand out to a guy through the course of a season, identifying a specific either formation or a certain blitz package or whatever we're focusing on in the moment. That one in particular, is lost in the mix of the thousands that I've gone through the course of my career. But it all boils down to that basic X and O understanding and being able to help those guys see the game week in and week out.
Right, it's almost like a shorthand or like instinct. It helps that you played the game. How much is it different over the years, too, for like which guys want a ton of information, which guys want a little bit of information? You know, I mean, this resume to me is like, I have to think that Theismann quarterback, Jaworski quarterback, Gruden loves quarterbacks, Witten not a quarterback, Booger not a quarterback. So talk me through like the challenges of some guys just understood the language, other guys you build a language, that type of stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, the relationship I had with Ron Jaworski, still to this day, one of my great friends, and we had a great understanding as to seeing the game the same way. Him and I both playing the position, obviously him at a much higher level, but we had that basic understanding and the same eyes when we see the game. So I was able to really work with him in a very productive fashion. I think Coach Gruden, when he and I got together, we were together for 9 seasons in the Monday Night Football booth. It was like a culture shock for me, the amount of information that guy has stored in his brain regarding football. That really, truly was like taking a PhD course. Every week he had something new that I hadn't thought of before. He broadened my horizon infinitely in terms of my understanding of the game. And then like a guy, Jason Witten, a year ago, who had no experience in television, it kind of went from the X and O heavy stuff with Gruden to, helping a guy understand the basic logistics of how a live television show works. So everybody's a little different. You have to adjust your personality and you have to adjust how you interact with them based on their own backgrounds. And it's been a challenge the last couple of years because there's so much turnover now in the booth, going from Gruden to Witten to now Booger. It's a challenge for me personally in my own career, but I think overall, the basic thing is try to be accurate, try to be smart, and try to help these guys look good on national television.
Tony Granieri's with us, mainland alum, spotter for ESPN, Monday Night Football, college football. So we're going to have him on the show as we get into football season. Of course, real college football starts tonight, Florida and Miami. That'll be on our air on 97.3 ESPN. So, Tony, tell me about the now that we're like late August, what's the typical week coming up for Tony Granieri starting, say, September?
It gets really crazy for me. I come off a summer where I get to be home a lot with my kids and go to the beach and go fishing a lot and enjoy my time with the family. And then, football season kicks off and I'm grinding straight through. So I leave typically Thursday mornings. I fly out to a college location. It could be USC, could be Texas, could be, Oregon, anywhere around the country. I'm flying that Thursday morning. I'll set up the event Friday. I'll do the game Saturday. I'll leave Sunday morning bright and early and fly to a Sunday game with Adam Amin, and I'll spot for him for an ESPN radio telecast doing an NFL game around the country. Again, it could be anywhere from Seattle to New York. I'll leave that game Sunday night or Monday very early and fly to the Monday game. Again, that could be anywhere, and do that game with Booger, and then I'll fly back on Tuesday morning and spend 2 or 3 days home with the kids and repeat that for 20 straight consecutive weeks through the fall. And by the end of it, I'm
Right.
worn down. It's 4 or 5 flights a week, hotels all over the country, and nonstop football.
I bet. The 100th season in the NFL you posted recently on Facebook, 50th for Monday Night Football, and year 16 for you in the booth. Yeah, I guess you've already been to Arizona to start in the booth, and the work has already begun.
Yeah, we did 2 preseason games so far. We're out in Arizona, and then we did a second one in Denver. It's not going to rust off for everybody. I think the first time you are, behind the scenes of a big NFL telecast, it's shocking how many people are involved. We have a crew of 150 people. We have 6 full-length TV trucks on site, a full operations department that's there to help coordinate everything, and the logistics that go into making all of that TV happen for the guy back home watching it is overwhelming. And I think, a big shout out goes out to the entire industry of all these people that, are away from their families, away from their homes for months at a time to try and make this happen for people. They're incredibly professional. They're, at least the crews I've been on have been nothing but, supportive and intelligent people that do their job extremely well. And to be a part of it for me for this long has been an incredible blessing.
And you're our own little treasure here, Atlantic County, Linwood, mainland. You know, you're right here in our neck of the woods, and you get to work with some of the biggest names. Have you watched Coach Gruden on Hard Knocks?
I have, yeah. It's a kick, man. That guy's got such a remarkable, football knowledge and all the stuff we talked about before. But in all my years and all the times I've spent, in this league and being around big name people and all that stuff, Coach Gruden was unique in his ability to control a room from the moment he walked into it. He had such a dynamic personality, and his storytelling, his ability to relate to people, was unparalleled. I think one of the coolest things about that experience is watching him interact with, the truck drivers, the guys that bring the TV trucks from site to site. They might have drove 3,000 miles in the course of 2 or 3 days. But the way he would interact with that person who, from a perception standpoint, might be very low in the totem pole, he was, engaged with them. He knew their kids' names. He was friendly. He was open. That guy has a unique personality that I think that has served him extremely well as a coach. And it's, there's no doubt he's entertaining when you watch him on that Hard Knock show. All that personality bubbles right to the surface.
I loved after he had like some cussing, he says, I got to stop cussing. No, we love that. Like that's the part that we find. So, and you saw that he brought in Frank Caliendo to impersonate him.
Yeah, we did a Christmas party 4 or 5 years ago, and Caliendo was there. And I was standing a foot away from the two of them, giving each other the Chucky face. And I was, bent over laughing at his impersonation, which was spot on. So it was great to see that on the Hard Knocks show for sure.
All right, let's put you on the spot a little bit. Don't worry, these aren't like hard questions, but 16 years in the booth, right, of different stadiums, airports. All right, so let's start with the NFL first and foremost. And your vantage point in most stadiums, by all accounts, it does not stink, but that said, there's got to be some stadiums that have better sight lines or some things you prefer more than the others. Give me some of the best and some of the worst places to do a game.
Oh, no doubt. I think from a personal, selfish standpoint, the best place for me to do a game is in Washington, D.C., down there at the FedEx Field. When we do a game there, Daniel Snyder, the owner's box, is right next door to us. So when we come out at halftime and we get our, halftime meal or whatever we're going to have, there's prime rib, there's lobster, there's cocktail. That's one of my favorite places in the entire country to go. And, of course, the stadium's beautiful on top of that. For pure aesthetics, if you go out to Seattle and have an opportunity to see CenturyLink Field, that place is incredible. The architecture there, the sight lines, the backdrop with the entire Seattle skyline peering through the little open part of that stadium is really a cool sight to see. And then from kind of the other side of it, when we go to Oakland, it's just terrible. The stadium is run down. It's the press box is tiny. There's no amenities of any kind whatsoever, and it's crowded beyond belief. It really, from a standpoint of where we are in the 2019 season and all these billion-dollar complexes that are just gorgeous, that one belongs in the 70s and should have been, eradicated 20 years ago. It's no doubt the worst in football.
No doubt, but Christmas or Hanukkah is coming for the Raider fans, right? Vegas, have you looked at those plans at all? Or have you? I mean, that's the thing, and you and I haven't talked about this on the air or off, quite frankly, but I always get a kick out of the fact when people spend billions and billions of dollars and then overlook the press box or don't create the right broadcast facilities. No disrespect to architects out there, but I don't think they ever worked a minute in TV.
No, it's absolutely true. And a lot of the times we'll go out to a stadium and do the first year, say Las Vegas when they open up next year, we'll go there and do a game. And the next time we're there in, say, 2021, they'll make a change based on the broadcast network saying to them, hey, this is screwed up. You forgot to add this or you need to change that. And all of a sudden the press box will look different in year 2 after they open the stadium because, like you're saying, the architects don't know exactly what they need to do in terms of, the logistics and the setup and all the stuff that goes into a broadcast of an NFL game. So it is a true thing, but at the same time, there's no arguing the fan experience has been greatly improved for the entire league. When you see these new stadiums go up, they're incredible. They're super comfortable. The Wi-Fi has improved dramatically over the last 2 or 3 years. And,
Yep.
Overall, it's much different than when we used to go to the vet and sit in the 700 level. It's an incredible experience for a lot of these people around the country.
All right, how about this? How about some funny Tony Granieri stories from the booth, or either things that you goofed on or somebody else goofed on? I don't know, you went to rent a car and there were no planes, trains, and automobiles, no cars left. You ended up having to take a bus, or, there's got to be some stories. And if they involve Gruden or Jaworski or Theismann or any of those guys, all the better.
Well, we've got quite a few mishaps and adventures along the way. I've had opportunities to catch red-eye flights across the country and show up for a flight and say, hey, I'm here to, check in for my 12:30 flight back to Philadelphia or whatever it is. And I've had an opportunity where the guy that booked my flights for the ESPN travel department booked it for the previous morning.
Oh, boy.
Red-eye flight. So I was there and had to spend the whole entire night at the Salt Lake City airport, which was not exactly thrilling. I've got to listen to Coach Gruden give speeches that, were hilarious and tell stories about his teams that were really insightful and impactful. And, I think the biggest part of my professional career so far is when they opened the Superdome after Hurricane Katrina. And I got to be there for that first game back and see the emotional response from the fans there. And I remember, and specifically talking to a woman that was one of the booth attendants, and she lost her entire house to the flooding. And she was real emotional. She had tears in her eyes, and she was telling me the story. And anyway, when the game kicked off, the Saints blocked a punt in the very first drive. Steve Gleason blocked it, and they pick it up, and they score the touchdown. And the stadium's erupting, and the concrete in the stadium is bounced up and down. And I remember standing in the booth and looking out the window to my left, and that same lady that I had the conversation was like 3 feet away from me on the other side of the glass panel. And she was crying so hard as the emotions bubbled up from all of that turmoil in her own life, to see all of her, the neighborhood, the family of New Orleans come together in that moment and watch her cry. I remember getting emotional. I still get emotional talking about it because it was, such an impactful thing. So from a personal standpoint, the coolest thing that ever happened in my professional career was that moment, seeing that woman react to what football can do for a community. It was really a powerful moment.
I love stuff like that. We're talking with Tony Granieri, who's a spotter for ESPN, has worked with the likes of Joe Theismann, Ron Jaworski, John Gruden, Jason Witten, now Booger McFarland. You mentioned Steve Gleason, by the way. He had his own inspirational story as well. We could spend a whole segment talking about that. I will say this. I just said Booger McFarland, and while you were talking, maybe the one benefit of all this changing in the booth is that now the Boogermobile is gone, right? Fans did not embrace the Boogermobile.
No, they didn't. Not on site because of the obstructed views that thing would create, but also from a broadcast standpoint, I think it kind of truncated the conversation, where in a typical booth you have 2 or 3 guys up there, they're face to face, you can feed off each other's rhythm, you can compliment what somebody says, there's more of a natural vibe to it. But when you're having somebody down there that's not a sideline reporter, who's actually part of the telecast down to down, it's not a smooth conversation, it's not an easy transition. And I think that, it's a cool idea in theory, but the application of it, unfortunately, was a little bit difficult, and something that they're, happy to move away from in year 2.
You probably don't know this because I've never said this to you before, but Saturday Night Live, you've seen a broadcast of Saturday Night Live, right? They have 3 or 4 people that write up the cue cards. I mean, that's like part of their tradition. Like, there's a whole cue card department to make everything off the cards. To me, you're like the cue card department in a way for Monday Night Football. You have to both communicate the information in a hurry, but do it legibly so the person that you're handing it to can also figure it out. What are the tools of your trade? Just describe for our listeners what you have set up both electronically and then just old-fashioned pen and paper.
So we have a program up in the booth it's called Live TV is the name of the actual computer program that allows us to scrub video back and forth, where we can, almost like a coach's clicker when you watch coaching tape. You can rewind, you can fast forward, you can slow-mo, you can zoom in, you can manipulate the video any way you want to show any type of scheme or matchup for anything that's going on in the game. So that's an electronic thing that's really helped me in my own personal role show our broadcaster exactly what's happening and use it as a visual tool. And then, we'll have a bunch of, like you were talking about, the handwritten notes that I just wind up scribbling down the information as fast as I can. That gets the information to him as fast and as accurately as I can. And then the other application is our headsets, that we're able to talk to each other during commercial breaks and relay the information that I'm seeing or whatever might be paramount at the moment. It's kind of like organized chaos. You have about 45 seconds between plays to get all of the information that you want into the hands of the broadcaster. And then that trust between the two of us has to be there for him to get his point across and to use the information that I've given him to help support the points he wants to make. So it's a choreographed dance that goes, from snap to snap for 4 quarters of a game, and it's quite stressful, honestly. But at the same time, I'm not out here digging ditches or pouring concrete, so it's a huge blessing in my life, and I'm very happy with how it's gone for the last 16 years.
Tony Granieri with us, ESPN Spotter. You can follow him on Instagram at The Spotter's View.